Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of What You Reading Wednesday. And I'm really excited. Something really exciting happened for Boone this week. On Tuesday of this week, a local author, Rachel Mans McKenney, had her very first published novel debut. It's called The Butterfly Effect. And Rachel actually attended our writers' workshops here at Erickson Library. So we're happy to have had a little bit of a part in her creative process. So we're so proud of her. And I believe we'll have 2 copies of The Butterfly Effect here at the library. They are in process right now. But if you are excited to read this as much as I am, definitely let us know. We'll put you on the hold list for it. And I do run a book club monthly discussion called the Rory Readers, which we're actually meeting tonight. And if anyone is interested in the book club, I think it would be fun if we actually all read The Butterfly Effect and then had a discussion on it. And I'm sure actually that Rachel might be willing to come and join in on the discussion when we discuss her new book. So exciting, The Butterfly Effect by Boone's own Rachel Mans McKenney. And in the spirit of that book, I decided that this week I would actually highlight books that have an Iowa connection. So typically I do a lot of YA books, but this week I'm actually doing nonfiction books. Now Rachel's book is fiction, but I decided to pull some nonfiction books that have Iowa connections. This one is called Summer at Tiffany, and I actually read this a couple of years ago and adored it. I loved it so much I actually went and found my own copy to purchase because I wanted to keep it in my collection. And it's by Marjorie Hart. And it says, in this glorious once upon a time fairy tale come true, 2 beautiful college debs from Iowa make it to New York City and end up working at Tiffany's and living the dream of every career girl of the 1940s. Marjorie Hart's charming and delicious account of her most memorable summer captures a time when women had moxie, wore proper hats and gloves, and burned with ambition to make it in the big city. I loved every moment of this book. And that review was by Adriana Trigani. So this is actually by Marjorie, who experienced that summer at Tiffany's. And I believe that they were actually some of the first few women that were hired to work at Tiffany's. So I think it's pretty exciting that 2 girls from Iowa in the 40s decided to head to New York City. So Summer at Tiffany. And this one is the autobiography of James Norman Hall, and it's called My Island Home. And it says, the romantic story of an Iowa boy who found an island solitude in the South Seas where he could dream and write. Is that not inspiring? It says, this is the modest, sincere, deeply felt autobiography of an American who was brought up in very humble circumstances in a small town in Iowa, who fell in love with literature at an early age, and who made up his mind while he was still working his way through college that he would travel to the far ends of the earth in search of an island solitude. By night, he used to ride the rods on number 6 to the sleeping college town of Grinnell, Iowa, and it was in this mystic communion and the sight of the glee club singing in the distance which fired him with the ambition to go to Grinnell College. And he ends up, I believe, in Tahiti, and all over Europe. And I just think it's such an amazing account of, a young boy in Grinnell, Iowa, many, many, many years ago who had literary ambition and wanted to see the world. So again, very inspiring. My Island Home. Highly recommend this book. And I grew up on Nancy Drew. I'm sure many of you also did. And do you know that Nancy Drew has an Iowa connection? And actually, Candy did a program with a lady about Nancy Drew, so you might know a little bit more of that history, but this book is also amazing. It's called Girl Sleuth, Nancy Drew and the women who created her, because there was actually more than one. And this is by Melanie Rehawk. In 1930, a plucky girl detective stepped out of her shiny blue roadster, dressed in a small tweed suit, ready to restore a stolen inheritance to its rightful owner. Later, tied up by villains, she managed to free herself and bring them to justice, all while wearing a pencil skirt and high heels. 80 million books later, Nancy Drew has survived the Depression, World War II, and the 60s, when she was taken up with a vengeance by women's libbers and emerged as beloved by girls today as she was by their grandmothers. Now, in a narrative with the fast-paced thrill of one of Nancy's adventures, Melanie Rehak solves a page-turning literary mystery. Who created Nancy Drew, and how did she go from pulp heroine to American icon? Nancy Drew, Girl Sleuth. This one is kind of a neat little title. It's called Little Heathens. Hard times and high spirits on an Iowa farm during the Great Depression. So begins Mildred Kalish's story of growing up on her grandparents' Iowa farm during the depths of the Great Depression. This, however, is not a tale of suffering, but the story of a childhood that built character, fed the intellect, and stirred the imagination. Filled with stories of a family that gave its members a remarkable legacy of kinship, kindness, and remembered pleasures, and brimming with recipes and how-tos for everything from catching and skinning a rabbit to preparing homemade skin and hair beautifiers, apple cream pie, and the world's best cheese. Little Heathens portrays a world of hard work tempered by simple rewards and shows how the right stuff can make even the bleakest of times seem like quite a romp. Sounds like something that we all could use right now, a little inspiring, uplifting story. And this one is called A Treasury of Iowa Tales, Unusual, Interesting, and Little Known Secrets of Iowa. And basically it's historical, interesting, informative. You will learn things such as the bizarre story of the Great Hotel War in Forest City in 1901, the real Music Man, Meredith Wilson, and the real River City, how 5 Ringling brothers from McGregor, Iowa built the greatest show on earth. So what a really interesting, neat little Iowa tidbits in there. This one is called Always Put in a Recipe and Other Tips for Living, from Iowa's best-known homemaker. In 1949, Iowa farm wife Evelyn Birkby began to write a weekly column entitled Up a Country Lane for the Shenandoah Evening Sentinel, now called the Valley News. 63 years later, 1 Royal typewriter and 5 computers, she is still creating a weekly record of the lives and interests of her family, friends, and neighbors. Now she has sifted through the thousands of columns to give us her favorites, guaranteed to delight her many longtime and newfound fans. Always put in a recipe and other tips for living. And finally, we have one called In the World of Laura Ingalls Wilder. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with Little House on the Prairie, which is the creation of Laura Ingalls Wilder and semi-based on some of her experiences growing up. And her tales happen throughout all of the Midwest, but one of the places that they did live in Iowa was Burr Oak, which is very close to the Minnesota border. And so this is beautifully illustrated. It says, this well-researched, sweeping book details the life of Laura Ingalls Wilder and those who came before her. It is clear that the different landscapes, Wisconsin, Kansas, the Ozarks, Iowa, Minnesota, shaped them, particularly Laura and Pa. The original art of Garth Williams and Helen Sewell deepens the poignancy and power of Laura's Prairie, since today only 1% of it survives. Laura's work has preserved it for us. This book preserves it for us all. So The World of Laura Ingalls Wilder. And we have many other books on her as well in case you're interested. So I hope that gives you some great suggestions of books that have an Iowa tie that you can come and check out here at the library. And we are also happy to deliver them to you curbside. So just give us a call, email us. We're always here for you and looking forward to you discovering your next favorite read. Until next Wednesday, take care everyone, stay safe and stay healthy. Bye-bye.